Savage warriors ravaged Earth, destroying most of life. With it, a new era of war was born. Tribes fought over what scraps were left until one leader remained. Now, old clans rebuild and new ones rise to take control of what's left of the world. This is Hate. Hate is a 2 to 6 player tactical skirmish game featuring a legacy-like wound and upgrade system. It has some of the most gorgeous art from legendary artist Adrian Smith and a vault of the most beautiful miniatures I think I've ever seen in a board game. The box is packed full of plastic. In fact, the base game alone has nearly 1.3 kilograms of plastic. And that's not including any of the expansions or add-ons we're going to be using today. This brings the total to a whopping 3.24 kilograms of plastic. The game can be played in one of two ways. You can either have a clash, which is a one-off battle, or a chronicle, which is a series of clashes, or basically a campaign mode. I highly recommend Chronicle because that's where majority of the mechanics lie. Once you've decided on the number of players, each player decides which one of the 8 unique tribes, or 11 if you're using the expansions, they get to lead. See, each tribe specializes in its own thing. For example, there's one tribe that can take control of their enemies' minds and move them around the board as they will. While another tribe is literally the rotting flesh of an old tribe controlled by a plant-like hive mind shaman who are very strong to start, but will fall apart halfway through the battle, becoming weaker. Each tribe contains 6 warriors, 2 young bloods, a champion, a shaman, and a prince. Gather the 11 miniatures, tribe cards, and a village sheet. Write your names and tribes down on the Chronicle tracker and map, and like a manager, you get to create the schedule of battles. Yes, schedule. It says right here in the rulebook. And now you're ready to start your first clash. Once players decide who's attacking first, that player chooses a territory adjacent to theirs to attack. It may not look like it now, but this is the first and probably biggest tactical decision you're going to make in this game. Because the person who chooses the territory gets to choose the scenario. And if you choose the scenario, you choose the battlefield. You choose the scenario by selecting one of these wonderful looking scenario sheets. As long as you meet the requirements, you're good to go. Set up the battlefield by following these detailed steps. Place your miniatures according to this illustration, solid color being the defenders, opposite the attackers. Some scenario sheets contain a mercenary spot, where you get a random mercenary to join the battle. Mercenaries are aggressive to both sides and are controlled with this AI deck. Now, whoever knocks out the mercenary and brings it back to their village gets to keep the mercenary. They usually replace one of your other guys, but it's a pretty good exchange seeing that they're very powerful. And there was a ton of different mercenaries, but you have to be careful because if one of your mercenaries dies, it goes back into the deck. Once you have your figures and tribe cards organized in front of you, along with your pool of savagery, the attacking player starts the first turn. Now each turn you can activate 2 figures. You do this by taking a savagery from the little savagery pool and placing it beside the figure right on the board. Each figure takes a move and an action. Moving can simply be moving your figure, or you can use it to harvest a resource from a tree. Now, you want resources because whoever has the most resources at the start of the round gets this feast token. And with the feast token, you can activate 1 extra figure a turn. Now for an action, you can either pillage a hut, grab a body, or attack a figure. You attack by rolling the number of dice equal to the attack value shown on the card, then change the wild rolls to either collect savagery or add a sword to your roll. Then the defender does the same by using his defense stat. Match the attacker's swords to the defender's shields, and if the attacker has more swords than shields, you knock out the defender and gain a hate. And now you may be thinking, wow, that's really simple. And it is. And that's the beauty of it. It is really simple. until you look at this little annotation on a warrior card. Support adds additional die to an attack made on an adjacent defender. So this guy came over and swung a sword at my opponent's guy and whiffed it. But my guy can support any attack on that defender. So my other guy runs over and attacks, adding a die to the total attack. And in this unlikely scenario, I have my champion and 2 warriors touching the opponent's prince, who all have failed to kill this giant monstrosity. But in the corner here, I have my tiny 1-attack ranged figure left. Making an attack on the prince will be 1 die, adding 1 for each of the warrior supports, then 2 more for the champion support. Oh, and I'm on a hill, adding another die. My opponent's now shaking in fear of my weakest unit because his buddies are all there, giving him an attack value of 6. And now you can see you have to keep the position of your figures in mind. And it really turns this simplistic cross your fingers and pray for a good dice roll type of game into a sharp-bladed, gritty, blood-spewing game of chess. And if all that was the meat of the game, then these are the potatoes. They're not potatoes, but they're skulls with spikes to them. And if you haven't guessed by now, they're called savagery. See, at the start of every round, you have 5 savagery. And as I mentioned before, you use them to activate your figures to move and make actions. However, that's probably the most simple way to use them. Each tribe gets a deck of cards called the tribe cards, and each round you get 2 tribe cards to use from. You either got to use them or lose them because they get discarded at the end of the round. So you want to use them as much as possible, and to use them, you just pay the savagery cost here. So they're like your mana in a way, but that's not all, because close by you have your village sheet. As you can see, out of all these various buildings and locations, one is called the Forge. And you can probably guess with the Forge, you can spend savagery to do things like move an extra space, reroll a die, or reactivate a figure. Now the village is a really powerful mechanic, and if you get too greedy with it, it's going to drain your entire savagery pool. And you might be thinking, hey, 5 savagery isn't really enough to do all these cool things. Well, you gain savagery from either rolling it on the dice, pillaging a hut, or KOing an opponent with savagery on it. And you also have to pick up the body. If you run out of savagery, that means the end of the round is near, so your opponent gets to do 1 more turn, and that's it. The round's over. And you could look at that as a bad thing, or you could take it as a tactical advantage almost. Use up all your guys, all your actions. Your opponent still has a few more left, but you can end the turn prematurely. And that's why this mechanic is so great, because it really gives you a push to be more aggressive and makes for way more exciting games. Players alternate turns until the round's over. The round ends when all the figures activate or your pool of savagery runs out. There's 4 rounds per battle, and at the end of the 4th round, or if the scenario goal is met, the battle is over. But the clash isn't over. In fact, that's the halfway point. And now for the intermission. During the intermission, players swap sides and do the battle again. However, first you have to assess the damage your tribe has taken. Any figure carrying an enemy body can either torture the poor soul to gain some hate, or cook them for some delicious resources. And anytime one of your guys is brought back to the enemy village, you won't be seeing him in the next battle. Next, you see how many of your brave warriors were knocked out and left to die. Bring them back to your tribe, roll 3 dice for each one, and compare the result to the scar table on the back of the book to see what injury they suffer for the rest of the game. Once you see the results, grab the corresponding scar card and add it to your card. And this is the whole reason why these cards have such loose sleeves on them, so you can add the scars and upgrades. And I was blown away at just how simple and fun it was to put a scar on your guy and watch him crumble. And most of the time, these scars replace pretty good stats with really terrible ones. After all the scars are applied and all the bodies are tortured and cooked, you get to add the hate and resources to your tribe. Do this by taking off the amount you received in each category on the Chronicle Tracker. Check for any bold numbers. You receive a random upgrade for each bold hate number you ticked off, and for each resource number you ticked off, you receive 1 tick for your village. After you complete these steps, you move on to the next battle and repeat the entire process, except after the second intermission, a winner is determined. Clashes continue until all matches are finished, and whoever has the most Chronicle points, which are victory points, wins. Hate's a game with a lot of creative mechanics and a lot of variety, however, it's not a perfect game. So here are some things I hate about Hate. Battles are 30 minutes each, and you have 2 battles and 2 intermissions in each clash, so you can see where it's going to be about 1.5 to 2 hours, depending on the experience of the players, to complete a clash. And that's not too bad if you're doing 1 or 2 clashes, but an entire Chronicle requires players to play 4 or 5 clashes each. So if you're trying to finish a Chronicle, you're going to need all day and all night pretty well. You could finish it over a course of a few days, but you need dedicated players. If one leaves, then you have to restart the Chronicle. So that kind of sucks. I'm not a big fan of that. Which leads me into my next point. Hate is 2 to 6 players, but I call it a 4-player game. And the reason being is at 2 players, you have only 2 tribes that are facing each other all the time. It gets kind of stale and boring, and there's going to be one clear winner, one clear better tribe. And for 3 players, you can have a 3-player scenario, like a 3-player clash, but that doesn't happen very often. And usually it's going to be you, one other person, and then the other person's going to watch, which sucks if they're not participating. That's a few hours of their time just kind of wasted. Another reason is some tribes are better than others at certain scenarios. For example, there's a scenario where the attacker is trying to kill the defender's shaman. Now, the shaman's in a pretty good high up place, well defended, but if you're playing the Bulgar tribe who takes control of another figure's mind, you can see that they just take control of their shaman and bring it down off the hill and kill him pretty easily. And it's not like one tribe's better than the other always, it's just certain scenarios favor certain tribes. And finally, it's the Scarves. Now, the Scarves are a lot of fun, and they're obviously a main mechanic of the game, but if you have that one competitive guy who's really trying to max out, his winning potential, all he has to do is knock out your guys, give them all Scars, and never pick them up. So you got a load of guys with a ton of Scars, because Scars are always stacking, and your tribe's just really, really weak. I've had it where I was begging my opponents to cook my guys, or, take them and do something with them, just to reset them and get the Scars off them. But it never happened. And I see that as like a big flaw, especially if you're trying to play competitively or something. If you can deal with those negatives, you'll find that Hate is a great skirmish game. I think it hides a lot of its good qualities under its simplistic rules, and I think the simplicity of it scares some people away. It's definitely an easy to learn and hard to master type of game. The game also has a ton of plastic, which I'm really biased about. I love the playable plastic. I'm Mike, this is Plastic Bits, and thanks for watching.